Are you thinking about getting the new Spark drone to record your next epic bike adventure? Well, in this video I'm going to give you some of the ups and downs of using this while on bike tour. Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, if you're looking for information and inspiration about bike travel, then definitely consider subscribing. So recently, Laura and I just got back from a shakedown ride where we had our fully loaded mariachis, and I brought along the Spark and tested it out to see what it would be like to use it on an actual bike packing trip. Overall, I have to say I was really impressed with the results from this super tiny drone. I'm going to show you a couple seconds of finished footage right now. And as you can see, it's pretty capable. You can capture nice cinematic shots. As long as you're not concerned about capturing in 4K, I feel like the quality is definitely up to par, and it would be a great tool to use if you're a bike vlogger or just want to share cool aerials of your bike tour. So some specifics about this particular trip: we were on the Deschutes River Trail, and this was actually a fairly windy day. I'd say there's at least a constant wind of about 10 miles per hour, and we got a couple of gusts going up into the 20s, and I was fairly impressed with how the Spark handled in the wind. So after using it out in the field, I'm going to share with you guys some of my likes and my dislikes about the Spark, and other just general observations that might help you decide whether you want to include one on your next bike tour. So the first thing I love about the Spark is that it's actually fun to fly. We actually own another drone, the Phantom 4, that we use on client shoots, and I actually find myself really stressing out when I fly it because it's big, it's heavy, it's expensive. There's a lot of potential for collateral damage if something goes wrong. But with the Spark, because it is so small and because it is so easy to fly, I find that I'm enjoying it more, that I'm focusing more on capturing images and less about kind of the anxiety of crashing it. Another big like, of course, is the size and the lightweight. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there saying, you know, why get a Spark? You should get a Mavic because the pack size is about the same. And that's true if you think of like general kind of overall volume. A lot of those people aren't carrying the Spark on their back, doing active things like biking. Yes, they're about the same pack size, but the Spark is considerably lighter and is even lighter still when you start to factor in things like the weight of the batteries. And number 3, I feel like it's actually a super capable drone. There's a couple things that it's missing that I'm going to go into in the dislikes, but for the most part, for basic movements, basic kind of aerial type shots that you want to capture, the Spark can definitely do it as long as you work within its limitations. So those are the things I like about the Spark. What are the things I dislike? Well, dislike number 1 is the setup time. When you watch the original promo videos from DJI, it makes it look like you can get up in the air in 10 seconds. And for me, the way I use it, that's really not the case. I got the Fly More package that has remote control, so there's a little bit more setup time, and I like to hardwire it with a cable, so I'm minimizing the amount of different Wi-Fi connections going on, and that definitely adds more time. And I'm also mounting it onto the bike, so again, it's a little bit more involved than just sticking out your hand and letting it go up in the air. So number 2 dislike, which I kind of knew coming in, was the battery life. It's not very long. Best case scenario for me in this situation was about 10 to 11 minutes of flight time. The second you turn on the Spark, even if it's on the ground, the battery is running down. You can see it on your phone, and it's literally like a ticking time bomb, trying to get the Spark up safely as quick as possible, get your shot, and get back down as safely as possible. The way I like to shoot, I feel like I can get maybe 1 or 2 good shots per battery. So I definitely recommend, if you get it, to pre-visualize and pre-plan how you're going to use the Spark so you can get your shot before that low battery warning starts beeping at you. So there are a couple technical things that I dislike about the Spark that I wish it had. One big one is that there's no way to control the gimbal speed. On the Phantom 4, you can control how quickly and how slowly the gimbal moves with the dial. And the Spark just doesn't have that. So you have to be really sensitive if you want a slow gimbal movement, which is possible, but it would be nicer if you could just set the max gimbal speed in the RC. Another technical thing I wish the Spark had was the ability to shoot 60p, mostly just so I can slow the footage down and make it even smoother. That said, it shoots 30p, it's locked into that frame rate, and if you bring that footage into a 24 frame per second timeline, you can slow it down to about 80% slow motion. So you can kind of still slightly smooth out the footage, but 60p would have definitely been better. So probably one of my biggest dislikes is actually active track. And I know that's supposed to be a big selling point, but I find it kind of slow and unpredictable. Like in this shot, we were riding along, it was working fine, and the second that we got behind the bush, it stopped and just completely lost us. If you guys aren't familiar, the active track on the Spark is purely visual. It doesn't track the GPS on your phone. So if it loses you in line of sight, then it just stops following you and never really picks you up. Another thing about active track that I'm not really fond of is that it's kind of unpredictable in how it's going to react to your movements. Sometimes you can get a sense of where the drone's going to go, but sometimes it just does something completely different. So I found that when I was riding with it and using active track, I always had my finger close to the cancel button in case it moved in a weird direction and was going to run into a wall or a bush. Another thing about active track, even with a remote controller, is that it moves fairly slow. In a lot of this footage, Laura and I are riding at 10 to maybe 12 miles per hour, and the Spark is having kind of a hard time keeping up. This can kind of be mitigated by distance. The further you are away, the better chance it has to tracking you when you're moving at a higher speed. If it's fairly close, good luck. And another thing about active track that I don't like from an aesthetic perspective is that it always needs to center you in the frame. The Spark has no sense of the rule of thirds, so you're always going to get this kind of boring centered shot. So if you want something artistic or something that plays more with the sense of space and composition, you're definitely going to have to do that manually. And really quickly about manual mode, a couple of these shots are active track and a couple of them are manual mode. And the second I switched to fully manual controls and just flew it next to Laura, I was super pleased with the results. So it's definitely capable, if you're already familiar with flying a drone, to get awesome footage. One thing that I did find with the Spark in ADI mode, even using the remote, it was still fairly slow. In this shot, I was trying to fly backwards and have Laura in the frame. And this is full stick backwards, and Laura's having a hard time staying upright just because the drone isn't moving fast enough. So I'm not quite sure if that's a function of just the top speed when you're in ATTI, or if there was it was a factor of the wind. But it was moving fairly slow, so that's one thing to keep in mind. I will say one thing I didn't test out was actually using it in sport mode. It just didn't dawn on me to switch it to sport, so that might be something I'm going to try next time on our next outing. Here's one weird thing. It seemed as if the Spark was hunting left and right, so I really had to just find a section of this footage where it was going straight. And I'm not quite sure if that's because it was gusty and the Spark was overcorrecting, or if that was the active track kind of struggling to figure out what it was tracking. So here's another example where I thought that I had highlighted myself, but the second we started moving, it became really obvious that the Spark was focused on a point on the ground that I don't know what it was looking at. So as you can see, it is capable of good results in active track. It's just really tricky to do. I find it kind of unpredictable and sometimes frustrating. But if you're traveling solo and you want to get a couple quick shots of you, maybe the drone circling around as you're riding, or you're sitting somewhere, then it's kind of just the only way to go. On the side note, the cargo net hack that I showed you in the previous video actually worked out perfectly. It held the controller and the phone on the bike, even though the terrain was a little bit bumpy. And I was still able to access all the controls, move the sticks, cancel active track if I had to, which I did a couple times. So I think the DJI Spark is a very capable drone. It's a fun drone. It's a great drone for first timers, or a great practice drone, which is the way I feel like I'm gonna use it the most. I feel like it'll actually make me a better pilot when I go back to flying the Phantom 4, just because I would have so much more airtime flying the Spark. It's not the perfect drone in terms of image quality and some tech specs. I fully anticipate that's probably going to change in the future. They're probably working on the DJI Spark Pro as we speak, but that's in the future. And if you want a nifty little personal drone now, I do recommend the Spark with some caveats. Just make sure when you purchase it, you're fully informed with kind of its limitations and its odd quirks. So if you guys have questions about the Spark, the settings I'm using, or anything else, just leave those in the comments below, How many of you guys are actually using the Spark as we speak? Let me know, send me those links. I'm curious to see how other people are incorporating the Spark on their bike adventures or their general travel adventures. And I hope this video will kind of help you make a decision whether the Spark is right for you. We kind of took the leap. I generally had a sense that I knew I wanted it and I could work within its limitations and quirks. And I'm making these videos just so you guys have no surprises when you purchase it. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.